I'm trying to encourage our people to think about businesses that serve a larger audience.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Future Included podcast, where we speak to interesting entrepreneurs and founders that are leveraging tech for good and for the growth of their businesses. In this exciting episode, I'm joined by Masibu Manima, and he has founded a digital growth agency. I shouldn't just say market, it's growth engine called Translate Culture. Mas, welcome to the Future Included podcast.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks for coming down on this winter Friday morning after a busy week. We're just about, a week and a half off of Christmas and all the things that are happening. But yeah, thanks for coming down. We're looking forward to speaking to you about Translate Culture, which is a growth agency that you've built and have been running for the last couple of years. But Mas, welcome. Give us a quick background on who you are, where you're from, before we get into all things Translate.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Masibu Manima. As Richard said, I run a company called Translate Culture. Worked in marketing for almost a decade, but always had a few side hustles and sort of built a reputation. Starting in my local community in Tottenham, the digital marketing guy. So that kind of built a bit of a track record. Then I helped my wife scale her e-commerce site. And then we was having conversations prior to that. So Richard is actually one of our early board members. And I guess what you were able to highlight was the opportunity in really doubling down on the wider digital marketing stuff. So 2020 took a leap of faith. 2019 actually took the leap of faith and launched Translate Culture, primarily focusing on helping e-commerce brands from our community grow through paid ads. But yeah, since then we've grown and worked with the likes of Wingstop and stuff. So it's been an amazing journey.
Nice. So that's where you are now. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot in the run up and the lead up to this. Let's speak about data culture. You mentioned kind of like how I came on as a board advisor with a few others as well. Mm-hmm. Speak to the audience about your data background and how you've been able to actually fuse that with culture as well.
Yeah.
You were covered in a lot of press, early on, you and yourself and your wife, and you kind of seen as that figurehead in the in industry here and further afield, covering and fusing that piece of data and culture together.
Yeah. So I think for me, the data piece really started. So I graduated in 2009, which obviously just post-recession. I worked in a corporate job, and what I learned very quickly was it was going to be very hard for me to become CMO anytime soon. There's just, when you work in a corporate environment, it's super hard. How do you stand out as a young junior person? And I guess the only leverage I kind of had was digital marketing was a new thing. I always remember back in 2009, we were paying some consultant crazy amount of money to tweet because Twitter was so new. So I felt like that was a leverage. So I really doubled down and tried to get a lot of experience doing digital marketing. But equally, back in my neighborhood, I was kind of telling everybody about this thing, the internet and whatever. And what I found really fascinating about digital marketing was it was the only marketing channel where you could get data back really quickly. So there's a quick feedback loop. So if you spend £1, you can very quickly see the impact of that £1. If you paid an influencer, obviously influencer wasn't a big thing then. For me, that was great. And then at that time, we had co-founded Mixtape Madness. And I was the only person in marketing. So I was doing all these different things. We had access to a lot of artists and so forth. And everything we were trying, some of it was working, some wasn't working. Because I was in a career, I was like, I have to find a more efficient way to scale this brand. Fortunately for us, I had installed Google Analytics. And then, we was doing email marketing, all these different things. And Twitter was taking off at the time. But we just couldn't get the traction. And then one day I woke up and I was like, let me stop and look at what's actually driving traffic. And at the time, there was an artist called K Coke. He had a mixtape that just dropped, and he was number one. So we used to have a chart, Northwest London. Yeah, he was number one consistently, and I was like, but where's the traffic coming from? Because I'm not marketing it. And what we found through Google Analytics, that most of the traffic was coming through Wikipedia. So somebody, I don't know if it was in his team or Rock Nation, had used his Wikipedia page to link to Mixtape Madness. And I was like to the guys, look, we got to stop everything we're doing. We're going to go on every single UK artist's page from the culture and just put their mixtape. So in the discography section, we just created a mixtape section, because back then you can easily edit Wikipedia. And what that showed me was the power of data and SEO, search engine optimization. And from that moment, it was obviously in any culture, in any human environment, people have opinions, and the only way you could really test that opinion is through data, right? So for me, it was always like, yeah, there was like 4 or 5 founders. We can all have opinions, but data's like the sixth founder. Like, we're gonna try what you think. If it doesn't work, we have to go with the data. So that's when I caught the bug, and then just kept talking about that, and then naturally led into e-commerce, because e-commerce was the one place where you could actually put money and see on the other side, like, yes, I sold this many products. So that's kind of like where I sort of got the bug from this.
Got you. And I think that, a lot of the time we speak about, entrepreneurs and kind of like them just jumping straight into their business. You had that experience of coming from a corporate, seeing how they're leveraging data. You mentioned that they were paying extortionate amounts for this person to tweet and all, and spotting those kind of like, not problem statements, but potential opportunities that you could then take into translated culture in your own agency, like further afield. At what point did you worked obviously in Mixtape Managers, you learned a lot there. Obviously that was a startup at that point in time. At what point did you kind of like have the confidence and catalyst to actually build and launch Translate Culture, and the risks associated with doing that as well and coming out of corporate?
Yeah, sure. So I think, that was a huge one. So I think I was with Mixtape Managers for about 4 or 5 years. Then I realized in 2015, like, this data thing is a huge thing. I actually remember it was somebody at Google, was like a senior scientist, said that data is the future or whatever. So I used to watch a lot of YouTube videos and I was like, I'm going to double down. So I left marketing and went to become actually a data analyst. I went to work for the British Medical Journal. So I kind of it was weird. I took a bit of a step down, but it was good because I was back in London and my manager was like really into data. Like, he was well respected in the industry. So for about 4 years, I stopped all my side hustles, any entrepreneurship. I said, I'm just going to learn. And I grew really quickly through that organization, learned a lot about data and built my profile there. But my wife's had an Etsy store, and I was just helping her, and I just asked her, like, can I start blogging the stuff that I'm doing? And just by blogging it, that's when the Evening Standard came and did an article on me. That built a reputation, which I then was able to create a WhatsApp group for black e-commerce brands. We used to actually have events at your old job at Google.
I remember you at Google at the time. I used to see Mas. I'll be leaving work, and I'd see Mas walking into the lift, and like with all these people, I was always inquisitive. What's going on here in terms of, at that point you were building a community, and we'll speak about community in a sec and how important that is as well. But speak about kind of like continue on that. Like, what year was this as well?
This was so Etsy store. My wife started in 2013, but it wasn't until 2017 when we started like building it. And the thing with Etsy, because it's a marketplace, there's only so much you could do. So I started to migrate her to Shopify, so I can definitely have a lot more control of the data. But so this community started in 2018. Our mutual friend Sade was obviously at Google at the time, which was, she was supporting us with hosting those events. And I think I just built a reputation, and what that taught me is the power of personal brand. So I'd become an expert within a small community. So 2019, a few of them needed somebody to help them with ads, and I was doing on the side. I was like, I'll take 250 here, £500, like, little side hustle stuff. And I could afford to do that because I was still in my job, right? But I don't know, just in October something happened. I was like, we just got a mortgage, and I was like, if I don't take the risk now, I'm never gonna, take it. So for me, it was like, I've got a 6-month runway. Let me try it. If it doesn't work, I can always go back. I did such a good job. My man, up until last year, my old manager still calls me to check in to see, do you want to? So which is great. And I think the advice I'll give anyone is, if you're trying to make that leap, is at least make sure you leave on good terms. And by good terms, it also means just having a very strong reputation. It goes back to that personal brand thing, right? So there's work that I did in BMJ today that is like, it's still talked about. So I can always go back if I needed. Well, not anymore, but I could have. And 2019 October, obviously I was having conversations with you as well. I think that's another thing, is I did something that a lot of people probably would think was a bit premature, but it actually worked really well. Because I was having conversations with you for a year before I left. And obviously you were in the digital marketing industry. You was, doing amazing things. So also I think that's the importance of people in our community working in spaces like this. So it's like, for a year I was talking to you, obviously Andy, our mutual friend, and so forth. So everything just aligned. So when I made that decision and I built that board of advisors, it meant that I could also be challenged. And obviously 2020 came, lockdown, black-owned brands, George Floyd, everything, and we were working with a lot of black brands, so we were just able to scale them through Meta. And that reputation's continued. So it's been a fascinating journey, man.
So a key bit of advice that you just shared there with our audience is the fact that kind of like how those accountability partners doesn't have to be at a formal board, so to speak, but have those professionals in different areas and expertise that can kind of really challenge you and push you, right, in
Yeah.
terms of the direction you go through, even if before you've actually formally founded the company. Like, I've seen Mass do that, and it's been definitely beneficial for the path that you take. It minimizes all of the different risks that are associated with, founding and jumping into a company like head first.
Yeah.
And if you don't know those people, like you had a great network and you've still got a great network, you can reach out to people, right, whether it be previous employees, as you mentioned, or
Correct.
kind of like on LinkedIn or whatever it might be. 2020,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say in terms of, because I look at that timeline and I think it's probably about 2018. Obviously I've been in corporate a long time, and I was kind of like looking for someone. I reached out to Alex Pfeffergar, shout out to him,
Yeah.
Kamuzi XYZ, and kind of like he put me in touch with you. I was looking for someone who's kind of, I think we was looking at the States, looking at kind of like what all those guys were doing. Memory kind of like evades me now.
Yeah.
Kind of like some of the people that I'm thinking of,
Mm-hmm.
Steve Stout,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
And they were doing a lot in that kind of area. And would you say that period, that 2020, 2019, obviously lockdown, would you say it was a beneficial period? Because that for me was like a really key period for that data and culture narrative and that growth of a lot of e-com brands.
100%. I always say like, obviously 2020, what they call it is like a black swan, comes
Yeah.
every thousand. It's not gonna, well, hopefully it doesn't come back again because I'm not trying to be locked in. But I think it was just one of those. For me, it felt like a perfect storm because I always say if I stayed another quarter, I probably would have left my job. Like, because in January there was mutterings around, it's coming from China, and everybody was like very concerned. Okay, what's going to happen? And you start. I think Italy and other European countries started to lock down. So for me, it was one of those things where it was just a perfect storm. And I think for us, translate, because we were helping the community that was closest to us, which was black consumer brands, right? And that's the thing I always say. One advice I always give people is, if you don't have a network and you have a skill set, actually the people closest to you are a great canvas for you to test whether you're. Because my thesis was, look, I knew I was talented and was good at what I do, but it's like if I didn't grow those businesses early, I probably wouldn't have done it. So even doing those ads for those brands helped. Anyway, but it was just a perfect storm because obviously 2020, everybody was at home.
Yeah.
My wife's business was a homeware brand, right? And even we could see like after lockdown, her sales started to dip.
What's the name of the brand?
It was Bespoke Binny.
Bespoke Binny.
Yeah, so she shut that down in 2023. But we knew we were riding a wave, right? She had a brand that did African print homeware.
Yeah.
And obviously during Black Lives Matter, everybody's looking for black brands to support. And I think one key data that I saw was the black entrepreneurs that were actively visible prior to the George Floyd movement were the ones that made a lot of money during that period.
Got it.
Because people were actively looking for black brands to support. I know loads of black-owned brands that didn't want to, be the face of it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That was the period where they didn't, really maximize. So I think it was just very interesting for me because from April, everybody's locked in, everybody's on their phone. Cost of ads is kind of dropped because the big players have taken big budgets out because they're still trying to figure it out. And then June, obviously with George Floyd, it was the first time I remember we were running ads, my wife's brand, and there were people who said they've never seen a black brand come on their feed. It's almost like the act of those people outside of our community actively looking for business for black businesses kind of unlocked the algorithm because these algorithms are built to give you what you want. So for me, that was fascinating. And they made me realize, actually, you know what? There's something here. So a lot of the brands that we work with now, so we only work about, I would say about 10% to 20% of our clients are black-owned businesses. But those black-owned businesses are selling products to a wider community, right? So then that means the algorithm and the platform, we could reach more people. So that's something I'm big on. I'm trying to encourage our people to think about businesses that serve a larger audience. Unless you're going to take it, unless it can work in Africa or to some extent America, because America has more black people. But if you're thinking about, if your distribution is just in the UK, start thinking about business opportunities that can reach a wider population.
So there's that ceiling that you're talking about in terms of that market audience. You need to appeal to a larger addressable audience, essentially. 2019, moving on 2020, 2021, and we're going to kind of go through these steps because I think it's really important in terms, like you mentioned, the cost of ads, cost of goods, supply chain, and all the things. Like things are totally different now from what they were.
100%.
We'll speak about that in a sec. In terms of your client profile, that's changed over the years, right?
Yes.
So speak about kind of like that community who you're allowing to be a client, sorry, and like who you're kind of like focused on now.
Yeah, so at the time it was just anyone who was there used to be another group called 10 by 10, which
Yeah.
had a lot of entrepreneurs on there. So a lot of the e-com brands there, we just created a separate group. So, we would work with brands like Afrocentrics, Trimit, Avrastel and Plumade and later on. And I think for me at that time, it's just who you have access to, right? And then word of mouth is kind of how we grew. So people be like, oh, who did your ads and so forth, went that way. I think the transition for us was in 2022, we threw our first event called Direct to Culture. And what the reason for Direct to Culture was meant to be just one event where I'm educating our community about the points that we've just highlighted, like what's your total addressable market. I just felt like we were spending millions of pounds on Meta.
Yeah.
And I was like, there must be a more cost efficient way to do this. And my thesis at the time was, well, podcasts. Like I watched the 90s Babies, all these different podcasts. I'm like, if that's the audience you're trying to reach, you're almost paying Meta to reach your own community. There's a more efficient way you can do it. So that was the thesis. And then we've had an event, 90s Baby spoke. They ended up partnering with Plot Made, which was an amazing partnership because actually when they launched it, and sometimes it's like, if you're bold enough to believe in a strategy, sometimes things align. And for us, when they launched that partnership, the first episode was with Chucky on Christmas Day in 2023. So that had loads of views and we saw the return on investment straight away, and then they went on to do a bigger partnership. So that was one part. And I think the what I was trying to educate people is like we need to find more cost-effective ways to essentially grow, because our cost of ads always increased. Now, I think off the back of that, obviously we had a partnership with Lloyd's who wanted to reach that community, and we've worked with them for 2-3 years. What started to happen then is we started to then reach a broader community than just the e-commerce brands, which has then led us to, and this is the power of community as well, a lot of the people that were coming to our events were influential in their own right.
Okay.
So, for example, the way we got the Wingstop account was the CMO of Wingstop had put a LinkedIn post saying, I'm looking for a paid media person. And there was like 100 responses. About 80% of that was people tagging me. But they were all reputable people in the industry. So you had Amma from Plant Made, you had Jamelia from Treasure Tress, you had Kenny, who's the creative director of Crystal Palace. So then, Deary then DM'd me, he's like, yeah, it looks like we got to talk. So all of that brand building that I had done, it was like almost the culture had said, you've got to go with this guy. And another one was very interesting. So one of the clients that we're working with right now, is a brand that sells, it's an ironmongery business. So they sell things like doorknobs and stuff like that. And that came about somebody that came to the Direct to Culture event who just connected us, right? And for us, it was really interesting because it was like, the skills were transferable. It's Google Ads, it's Meta, whatever. And what's really fascinating is we've been working with that company really well, but one of their biggest customers is actually someone who owns hotels in Ghana.
Wow.
So they order a lot of their materials from a British company. So now they're thinking strategically in terms of growth. They need to figure out how do they break into Africa and the Middle East and emerging markets. So even though we went in there to ads, translating culture in terms of how do you, because marketing in Africa, you're not going to do it through ads, it's through relationships and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, our profile is very much who can leverage our transferable skills. But in the second part of that, what we're really good at is, irrespective of the target audience, we are humble enough to understand who that target audience profile is. And I think, just to wrap up on it, it also helps being a ethnic minority, because you live in Britain, you almost have to understand the British culture and your own culture and then your peers. I would say, like, my family come from Congo. I lived in Tottenham. I had to know Nigerian culture, I had to know Jamaican culture, I had to know Ghanaian culture and the wider British culture. So I almost feel like I can work with anyone as long as there's time to understand the data and the culture and the people, basically.
Love that. You've just dropped so many gems in different areas. The first one I wanted to kind of like just touch on. You mentioned that brand equity, that reputation, and I think that's just so important in terms of, like, you mentioned like BMJ, leaving BMJ on good terms, but the brand equity that you've built up over time, since founding in 2019, all the way up, in terms of just people just tagging you on LinkedIn. It's just a simple lead gen. And for someone else, like another agency, to acquire that client, it would require a whole load of series of interviews and, due diligence and all the thing. But because you built up all that brand equity, they've literally just taken a lot of that barrier and hurdle out of the way, right? And I'm sure you get a lot of referrals anyway off of the back of that. So I think that's really great and that's key. Let's just talk about media spend, 2019, 2020, 2021, people building their businesses up off of the back of that low kind of like media spend based, CPAs being low, CPMs, being low, etc. To kind of like cost then going back up, cost, supply chain logistics, all the things. Speak a bit about that, kind of like weathering like different climates, economic climates I can kind of speak about, and what impact that's had on, some brands.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing. Like, I could kind of foresee it because every year and year cost was going up. And the hardest thing is, look, a number of the brands we've worked with are no longer here today, and people can see it. And because I was close with those brands, there's almost like macro things that have happened that they don't have much control over. So I know there's a brand that we were working with. They did everything right operationally, but a big US brand defaulted with Amex, and Amex decided to cut everybody's credit line, but they already invested in products, right? So I think operationally, some people did the best that they could do at the time. But the main thing, to answer your question, is, ads are one of those things where I've always realized that cost just goes up over time, right? And that's just the nature of there's probably more people advertising, because if I see Richard successful running ads, I'm going to start running ads, and everybody runs ads, and it helps the tech platforms, obviously. But there's competition for attention, but also iOS 14.
Yeah.
So the platforms were no longer able to actually see the data of what's converting. That was a big impact. But I think Meta did a great job kind of patching that up. But what I've learned over time now, some content I'm going to start putting out called macro truths. Okay. And what I mean by that is, I don't think enough operators have enough of a macro understanding what's happening in the world. Sure. So 2020, yes, we did a great job, but there was lockdown. People were stuck at home, right? And then more recently now, there's tariffs. That's a macro truth that's working against those brands because your margins are going up. But it's something that we actually discovered yesterday. So this is actually an exclusive thing. You're going to be the first person that I've said this publicly. We've identified that if you're a British brand and you're running ads on Meta, you can't claim VAT back on that particular ad spend because they're based in Ireland. Yeah. Because they don't charge you VAT. Yeah. So essentially, say you made 100 grand and you spent 50K. Yeah. You've got to pay 20% on 100 grand to the taxman, but you can't claim back that to 20% that you've paid essentially on that. And we checked all the ad platforms, Google, everybody's based in Dublin, so you can't even claim it, except TikTok. TikTok actually, when they invoice you, it's got VAT. So now we're going to start running a test where, can we get the same efficiency on Meta as we could get on TikTok? Because at least you can get 20%. So there's almost a 20% tax on you running on Meta versus TikTok. So there's all these different macro things that I think brands aren't necessarily looking at. And I think, cost of ads was naturally going to increase because there's more people. But I also think there are macro things around. Like I said, my wife's business did well. She had a homeware brand that was clearly black owned during lockdown. And she did a great, obviously we run ads and so forth. She had me and my team to support. But you can't fight against the fact that majority of the world is going back. Yeah. The supporting black business thing started to dip. But this is why I'm encouraging more of our entrepreneurs to look at the macro factors and actually create businesses that can leverage that. So at the last Direct Culture event, we gave 25 grand to a brand called Pet Cremations, which was a black-owned business in the pet space. And everybody was surprised that they won, because everybody else had a hair care brand. But we worked with so many hair care brands. But they identified that there was 9,000 people in the UK that were searching for pet cremations. So it's like, those are the kind of ideas I want us to think. Like, Britain as a country, we love our homes and we love our pets. So I'm not surprised that the client we're working with, doing ironmongery, people are buying these doors for like £1,000. If our cost per acquisition is like £20, the margins are much higher. So even as an agency, we've got to capture those clients where the margins are higher, but also there's a huge market. So going back to it is, yes, on a micro level, cost of ads are going up, but you can also leverage what's culturally relevant, right? And we were seeing with that brand as well, there's a Netflix series called, I think it was Yellow Brick, something, I can't remember what it is, but it was like old Western. We saw trends of people searching for home interior that looks like that. So that's also translating culture. Love like that. People watch something on Netflix and then go imitate it. So we had to like make sure that as that brand, we can tell those stories and like, we've got these doors that are similar to that series. So I think agencies are going to have to be a bit more than just media buyers. They're going to have to really understand the macro trends and knowing how to jump on them really quickly. And I think that's something that we're particularly good at.
again, you've just covered so many different topics that I've kind of like wanted to dissect and unpack. I think the first one, if my memory serves me right, was that channel diversification, right? Not just focusing on media spend. Like you gave the examples of 90s babies. You know, where can you drive organic traffic from?
Correct.
Early on, you spoke about Wikipedia page. Like back then, there's no way we're thinking about referral traffic from Wikipedia
Yeah.
pages. That's mind blowing. But now it's like really a lot more obvious because the social channels. That's like the go to. But you spoke about like a lot of other areas, and I think that's a unique position of Translate Culture. Like that partnership that you just mentioned, like Ghanaian Hotel, and kind of you're doing Ironman. Like how can you fuse that? And I think that's definitely a unique sitting that you've got in the industry overall, like amongst that. In terms of like some of the other points that you've kind of like mentioned as well, like how do you feel like these brands that are kind of like weathering like the storm that I spoke about in terms of the different costs that are kind of like going up, and like you mentioned like looking at obviously as a result of Brexit, that's another kind of like area, right, that you've
Yeah.
just mentioned, and obviously that billing coming from Ireland. What steps can some of these like brands like take? Where can they access your white papers that you're going to be producing, or these reports that you're mentioning?
Yeah, so we're going to start producing those on our social channel, Translate Culture,
Okay.
initially, and then eventually publishing them on our website.
Mm.
But yeah, I think we're just going to put out a lot more organic content. And one thing we used to do was call pull-up sessions where every other Thursday people would just come to our office. Because I used to get a lot of people be like, oh, can I have an hour with you and
Mm.
so forth. I'm just so busy. Obviously still want to help the community. We might bring those back. So every other Thursday, what we ask is if you're a brand and you want my expertise, you come to the office and you tell my team what the problem is.
Yeah.
But it's also a great way for me to teach my team.
Yeah.
So then so that we used to do that. So we're thinking about bringing that back. But yeah, our main social channel, Translate Culture, next year, we're going to start releasing some stuff. And you mentioned white paper. We're looking to do some white paper on also like Africa. Like Gary Vee's talking a
Yeah.
lot about Africa's the future and everything.
Yeah.
But we've spoken about these for
Yeah.
years. And what I've always found fascinating is it's like in our own community, we know the influence of our community,
Yeah.
right? More broadly, but we've not had the opportunity to build for that opportunity. And I think that's something we've been able to do with Translate, having your advice and everyone else is like we're betting on that, and now the opportunity is landed. So we're going to do a lot more white paper on how do you authentically
Yeah.
engage the continent and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I think there's a stat out there, isn't it? Like a lot of countries across Africa are going to have the largest percentage of 1624s in the next, I don't know, 20 years or whatever it is, like globally,
Yeah.
like concentrating in Africa. And I think, yeah, that play makes like total sense, like what you're speaking about. Let's just speak about that team actually. So your current team, like how did you form it? Like what are their roles and responsibilities, and kind of like how they driving growth for your clients?
yeah, so our team at the moment, there's 6 of us. So there's myself. There's someone leading our TikTok shop. So TikTok's actually a big play for us next year. He's come on board. We've got someone on Google. We've got someone on paid social. And then we have almost like another agency that we bring in to sort of support on creative. It's actually somebody that I worked with in a previous startup, and he's really good, so I've kind of just brought him on board. And then SEO is another freelancer that we sort of bring in. So yeah, so we cover mainly paid and performance marketing. And yeah, each of those kind of own their own channel.
Okay.
But yeah, TikTok's just really fascinating. You probably notice I'm going to speak a lot more about it.
Yeah.
Like in the socials and stuff, just because some of the platform stuff that they're building and we're seeing is going to be quite fascinating. I think TikTok Shop, just to answer your question earlier, I think if anyone in our community wants to get into e-com, that's the one platform that I would say use because they're very affiliate marketing led. So you don't necessarily have to spend money on ads, but you pay the influencer that's able to drive you traffic and conversions, right? So yeah, we're going to be speaking a lot about that. But I think these are one of the things that I'm always championing to our community to be early, because it's still early.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a UK artist that used to go on live, and there was a post on Shadeborough of him going live, and then people are, he's dropped out, he's on live now, he's selling coins and whatever. But people don't understand the magnitude of money that people are making on this platform. And I think there's an element of shame that we need to just kind of overcome. And I remember, I don't know what her name is, what was her name? Haley says, we're too broke not to go live.
Got you.
I think
Love that quote, yeah.
what she means by that is, as a community, we can sometimes be too prideful
Yeah.
to do things that other people are doing to make a lot of money. Bro, like there's agencies that manage live hosts that are making 100K a month.
Yeah.
Right. And we even looked into that. But I think TikTok Shop is a great opportunity for a lot of people. But I think TikTok in its entirety is also great because there's actually data that shows the penetration of TikTok in the continent in Africa is way more faster than any other social media platform. And it's youth driven. And you could even see the trends in the culture here in the UK. Like you had the Cat Slater with the Congolese uncle dancing. You had the Ugandan uncle that's dancing. There's a lot of, if you actually map out the top 10 trends here in the UK in the last year or two, they either came from Amapiano,
Yeah.
Uganda, like,
Yeah.
so the culture back home is actually influencing the culture here.
Yeah.
So, and it's only happening really on TikTok. So, so yes, to answer your question, I think, yeah, there's, that's one I'm super bullish on. And I think the team's resource, we're really pushing towards that right now.
Oh, it's great. And I think, yeah, just like what you said, you know, the data's there, right? In China, they've been doing like live shopping like for years, right? It's nothing new. And I think like a lot of the time we kind of like wait for it to become what we term in cool before we kind of like dip our toes in. We'll just sit outside and kind of like look in for a bit before like someone big does it, right? And then we kind of like jump in. But yeah, like, yeah, first movers advantage is definitely key, right? 100%. Especially before it becomes, you know, the cost will, you know,
Eventually.
the payaways will come down eventually, and all the things like, see, it's just trends and cycles. It's like similar to kind of like what you said, and obviously you're looking at the data now, and I think that's the most important thing. Like the black and white is binary, right? In terms of like the numbers that are there. What's the future for Translate Culture in terms of position in the industry, services you're going to be providing, building anything? Like let the audience know what your future is.
Yeah, so I think the first 5 years was really focusing on that e-commerce, helping consumer brands. And I think we've done a great job there. And I've managed to hire good enough that I know I can go away for 2 weeks, which I'm planning to do around Christmas. Not go away, but at least switch off, hopefully. My wife's going to be happy about that. For 2 weeks, and I know my team will do a good job. The next phase for me is really interesting. It's more around culture and sports and lifestyle. So we did some marketing for the Unity Cup back in May. And what's really fascinating about that is, one thing that I always think about when it comes to sort of black culture, I think we've heavily been leveraged as a way to market to youth culture. But there's you and I, you know, we've got kids, we are the target audience that brands should be targeting, right? If you consider, and I don't think there's never really been a great approach in terms of targeting us. And I think the Unity Cup showcased that we can throw a 3-day event and people will bring in their moms and like the kids. It's a family event. And another leverage, if you look at Carnival, like there's so many events that we have or activations that we have in our culture that are like rich in brand engagement if brands do it properly, but also just shows that the influence that we have in our community, because everybody comes to Carnival, right? So we're looking into that, building that lifestyle. And the reason I say sports, because sports, I was joking with my friend, it's one of the few things that's going to get disrupted by AI and robots, right? You're always going to want to watch Cristiano Ronaldo versus a bunch of robots playing football. That's not going to happen anytime soon. But it's also one of the things that actually just generally brings people together, right? So we're really doubling down on that. And I think we're in a transitional period as well. I think this World Cup is going to be quite amazing because it's the highest number of African teams we're probably going to have. If you look at other sports, even football, Messi's about to retire. Ronaldo's going to retire soon. LeBron James is going to retire. Like, if you think about who's the main world superstar, so from a brand perspective, the larger brands in the world are going to be looking for another superstar. Like, if you think about even Steph just left.
Yeah.
So like the world there's a transitional period that I think in 2026, and I think it's an opportunity for brands that really understand how to leverage sport to really build storytelling and engage. And hopefully, you know, the next superstar is from Africa, is from the culture. But if you can even see, I think Arsenal's a perfect example of it. I would say Arsenal Football Club is a perfect example of making the right bets. And my positioning is I'm going to spend a lot more time speaking to CMOs of large organizations. And the main message I want to get to them is there's a difference between being a CMO to being a marketing manager. A marketing manager, you have a 3, 6, maybe 12-month target. As a CMO, you've got to be taking bets that are going to pay off in 15 years' time. Yeah. And if you look at Arsenal Football Club, they've taken certain bets just because they've been culturally inclusive from Wade. I remember my aunt telling me she used to sneak off in school in the 70s to go watch Arsenal train. because they had loads of black players that
Oh
she
wow,
fancied,
okay.
right? You know what I mean? And then
Redcastle's probably one of them, yeah.
all of those guys,
Yeah.
and it's continued. And you think
Yeah.
about all the people that support Arsenal because of Ian Wright,
Yeah.
because of Thierry Henry,
yeah.
all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And Wenger was a big part of that because
Yeah.
he really invested. He believed in African football and all that type of stuff. And we saw look at the French football team,
Yeah.
and you look at Arsenal now. Eze was about to go to Spurs, but he makes a call to Arteta, like. That's the type of thing. And then when you look at those players, they're just themselves. Like Eze is on Sky talking about his faith.
Yeah.
What's his name? Saka
Yeah.
plays for England, but he's back in Nigeria people are fully themselves. And the thing I want to wrap up around that is brands need to understand that we're probably the last generation where a majority of us are going to be from like one country, like, oh, I'm fully Nigerian, I'm fully Congolese.
Yeah.
You're going to have situations where, like my children, they're half Congolese, quarter Jamaican,
Yeah.
quarter Ghanaian, and British.
Yeah.
So imagine in a World Cup, there's 4 or 5 teams they're going to support, right? So they might want to go to this bar to watch the Ghana game, and they put on their Ghana shirt. How does a brand like tap into that? And the only thing I want to wrap up on that, where I want to go into sports, my daughter's an Arsenal fan.
Yeah.
I used to hate Arsenal because my mates were all Arsenal fans. I used to like really, but she's an Arsenal fan because her mates are Arsenal fans,
Yeah.
and they're Arsenal fans because Arsenal's just cool. That's the thing that she got across to me. It was like they're just cool. So I took her to the Emirates and stuff. So like more as a dad, you know, it's like back in the day you can influence your children to support the team you support, but right now it's like who's actually invested in culture.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So and then obviously women's league is taken up, so she might be and Arsenal have massively invested in their women's football team. So that's the piece that I'm going to be spending a lot more time and try to build personal brand in that space of like being a trusted voice amongst CMOs who are thinking not 1 year, but like how can we invest today to win 5-10 years time?
That's such an important point you just kind of like made, and kind of like how that early, and obviously I have to throw the 1J quote in, legacy,
Yeah.
right? And like that history of kind of what we built in the 90s, 80s, in Arsenal, your daughter's doing the right thing in terms of who she supports. But like it reigns through now, like massively, you know, amount of people that I meet, even just like in different countries as well. So like a lot of my colleagues, you know, I speak to them, they're in the US, like what's the reason why you support Arsenal? Henry.
Yeah.
They bring it up, or Vieira. There's this synergy between, or even maybe an African affiliation between, like Drogba's a massive one.
Yes.
You go
Chelsea.
to like Ivory Coast and they've all got Chelsea tops on because of that legacy. And the same with, you know, a lot of the different players. So that kind of like piece that you just mentioned, again, you're fusing that kind of data again on the marketing side. How do you fuse that with culture? And I think that's just so important. And I think, as you mentioned, it's going to get even more important for the next, you know, generation. It's definitely key. It's great to see that you're investing time in that because it's a great area. In terms of like the tech enablement platforms, obviously you're doing a lot of work, you know, being kind of like not just the middleman, but kind of like a facilitator in terms of engaging, you know, brands and kind of like creating those opportunities. Are you building anything in terms of like tech platforms or tech enablement?
Yeah, so we're looking at something which I need to speak to you about actually. But ultimately, in my last job, I was managing something called, or there's a concept called a single customer view, which I'd never heard of before. But ultimately, what we did at BMJ is because we had data sources from all these different platforms, we was able to bring it together so you could just search Maz and see all the data points Maz has, from email to publications and all that type of stuff. And I haven't really done much on it, but it wasn't until one of our larger clients that I worked with and I noticed that they have a similar view, because obviously a lot of brands are leveraging different platforms. Let's say if you are a food brand, you got Deliveroo, you got Uber Eats, you got all these different data points. So we're looking at that space because it's quite interesting, because by being able to have a single customer view then is able to dictate like, okay, how is our customers behaving across different platforms? So like they might have, they might have seen us on an external app and signed up through there, but then they order through this app. So then now you have like a view of that. So the way we're approaching that at the moment is we're going to start with partnering with the agency that helped us build that platform when I was at BMJ. So it's the power of relationships, right? I'm able to have conversations at that level. And because I've got clients who are already interested in that type of technology, we can go in as a partner, but then ultimately start figuring, okay, cool, do we then build our own like internal tool that sort of bridges that together? Obviously with data privacy and everything, like you got to make sure that this is done properly. So for us, it's interesting to partner with that. But yeah, so we're looking at that space of being able to see that full customer journey, and being able to attribute ad spend or any form of marketing towards it. And one thing I wanted to discuss with one of our clients we were talking about, they realized that we were running ads and we were being measured by the sales that we were bringing. But they noticed afterwards that actually a lot of people said, oh, I Googled you guys and saw you. That's why I came into the store.
Yeah.
But we can't easily attribute that.
Yeah.
So how do you do like offline attribution? So we're looking at those types of things. Because I'm always of the view, like, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you should never stop marketing. And I think the world I come from in terms of paid ads, because people are seeing such great results, they just end up being stuck in that, okay, I'm not seeing results. Why am I going to sponsor that event? That I'm not, like, it's not paying off. But if you get a mailing list from there and you get them into an ecosystem, you can see, oh, Richard signed up in 2022.
Yeah.
He bought in 200 5 years later, but he spent 100,000. So it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like some relationships take longer. Or like the situation with my daughter, like maybe there's no data way to see that, but it's like, it might give you a blueprint of certain touch points. Like if I went onto Arsenal's website and I registered and they say, why are you going to an Arsenal game? It's like, my daughter's a fan or whatever. Then there's the potential trend there. It's like, oh, who do you support? Well, I don't support Arsenal, but I'm going to an Arsenal. Am I a one-off? Or is there a trend of dads and mums taking their children to Arsenal Football Club, but they don't support Arsenal? Because what I found really interesting, speaking to the people at the Women's Super League, was quite interesting and that's why I think the Women's Super League is another big player in sports, is that there are people who support Chelsea football team, say for example, the men's one, but support Arsenal's women's.
Yeah.
So it's almost like in that space you have a bit more, it's not like a local thing. But then how do you know that as a one person or couple people instance, but data can also start to show that. And it's as simple as just asking, what team do you support?
Yeah.
And then you could just see, okay, 80% of our fans actually don't support us, but they're coming to the games.
Yeah.
So then you figure out strategy from that. So I think we're just figuring out how do we build that into a platform so that a lot of these nuanced, what seems very nuanced, can be shown to data. Because you and I know, as you get higher, you need to have the evidence. It can't just be like, oh,
anecdotal.
Oh, my daughter likes it, so then all the kids no, but here's the data. Like 60% of your fans don't even support you. But so that's the next play we're looking at. But I think the way we're going to do it, because ideally you could hire talent and whatever, but I think because of the data piece there's so much like legal thing around it. We want to partner with somebody who's been doing it for years. If British Medical Journal trusts you, then it's easy for me to sell you into our clients, and then we partner, and then we then figure out, okay, cool, do we build our bespoke thing with them through a partnership, and then maybe hire people internally who manage that platform. So that's what we're looking at.
Incredible. Yeah, it's great that you think of that data and privacy policies
early
on, because the future implications of getting that wrong like later on is going to be potentially like really bad, damaging. That's great. Like, that's super exciting. I look forward to kind of like hearing more about that. I think the women's like league is definitely a massive growth area. I think we've seen it in the US already, and kind of like obviously again back to looking at trends and data like abroad, and kind of like being open to the world and kind of like seeing what goes on there and what eventually does, obviously being a smaller country kind of like in the globe, what comes over here. But yeah, definitely our viewers connect with Mass, like look at kind of like think about the reports that they're putting out, and we're excited to see a lot of that. Any last thoughts for our, or anything you wanted to mention for our audience? Just generally, where can they find all the things for Translate?
So Instagram, Translate Culture, so at Translate Culture. Our website is translateculture.co. Our event is at Direct to Culture, so we'll be using most of those channels to start putting stuff out.
Nice one. I'm looking forward to attending some events and kind of like reading the reports and all the things. But super excited about this area of data and culture and growth just generally. Mas, thank you for coming on Future Included podcast.
Thank you, bro.
We look forward to hearing more in the future.